This is The World This Weekend. Good evening, I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Tonight, an island paradise left in ruins.
Our house is literally dust. The whole thing. It's gone.
We have the latest on the wildfires on Maui. Also tonight.
We do expect the worst this summer, fall, but we are prepared.
Atlantic Canada braces for a busy hurricane season, and hip-hop celebrates its golden anniversary.
Hip-hop has continued to speak to people because it is a means to experience not just America's history, but the way that that history spills into the present.
That's later, but first. We begin with the devastation on the Hawaiian island of Maui. At least 80 people are confirmed dead after wildfires consumed the historic city of Lahaina. Hundreds more are still missing or unaccounted for. Officials say almost all of the buildings damaged were homes. The CBC's Magda Gabriel-Selassie is in Honolulu. We spoke to her earlier. So Magda, tell us the latest about the search for victims.
Yeah, well, the search for more wildfire victims, that is continuing. You have teams that are sifting through what remains of the burnt-out buildings in Lahaina. There are more than 2,000 buildings that have been damaged or destroyed there. So most of them are residential buildings, and that is why you're hearing that the number of deaths associated with these wildfires will likely continue to rise. It is estimated that there are hundreds and possibly more than 1,000 people that are unaccounted for. As for the people that did make it out alive, many of them are describing how close they came and how little they had when they fled the flames. Some of them were allowed back into Lahaina yesterday to check on their properties, including this mother-daughter duo, Mindy and Madeline Barrett.
Everything is gone. The town, lots of people, the house, it's the trees. Our house is literally dust. The whole thing. It's dust and some roof metal. I mean, it's gone.
Oh, Magda, I mean, you just hear clips like that and it sounds so awful what people are going through there. And we've also been hearing about people outside the island desperately trying to get in touch with their relatives. What's happening there? How challenging has that been?
Yeah, with so many people that are missing, you have family members outside of Hawaii that are trying to get information about their loved ones, about their parents, about their siblings. And what they're doing is they're turning to social media. They are posting messages, pictures of their relatives, asking people for information on their whereabouts. And so you're seeing a lot of these messages online from family members that are not here, that are not able to access the information in person. As for people that are in Maui, they're being directed to a particular center to try to get any information on people that are unaccounted for.
Well, there have also been complaints about poor warning systems. How are officials responding to that?
Yeah, there are many questions that have been raised about the lack of warning before the flames quickly spread. And officials say the warning sirens were not activated. And while there were alerts sent to phones and TV and radio stations, power and cellular outages got in the way of those messages getting through. So there are a lot of people that are questioning whether more could have been done in advance to prepare for something like this. Hawaii's Attorney General has already confirmed that there will be a review looking into the decisions that were made before and during the wildfires.
Okay, stay safe there, Magda, and thank you for being there for us.
You're welcome.
That's the CBC's Magda Gabriel-Selassie in Honolulu. Officials in BC are working to contain wildfires in the southern interior with a heat wave expected to arrive by next week. Workers continue to battle 3 fires around Kamloops, the largest measuring more than 7,000 hectares. The BC government is also urging residents to prepare for potential heat warnings. Dave Ray is a meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Certainly as we get into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, we're looking at highs of 33 degrees and expecting that to continue right through till Thursday, and then the weather looks to change to a more cooler pattern on Friday.
Now, Ray does say this heat wave will be 7 to 8 degrees cooler than that heat dome of 2021, and the evenings will be significantly cooler. Well, from heat waves to possible hurricanes in Atlantic Canada, forecasters are warning there is an increased chance a hurricane could hit this season. Warmer ocean temperatures mean storms are more likely to form and keep their intensity for longer. Katie Nicholson reports.
The rafters are then tied into the corner onto those wall studs with hurricane ties.
Wade Bryanton's new barn is close to stormproof.
This is made from a 6x6 metal bar, square tubing, all engineered to provide what we need.
Last year, as Fiona pulverized PEI, it destroyed 2 of his barns.
And it just took the whole roof structure system, walls right out, lifted it about 50 feet in the air, dropped it down on top of the cattle.
He's rebuilt stronger and smarter, even buried power lines from his generator to protect them from the wind, all in time for the looming hurricane season.
We're certainly not looking forward to it, but I guess we have to deal it the way we get the hand dealt to us.
On Thursday, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the U.S. upgraded its hurricane forecast. There is now a 60% likelihood of an above-normal hurricane season. In May, it was just 30%. That means more big, named storms and anywhere from 2 to 5 major hurricanes with winds of up to 178 kilometers an hour or more. The revisions come after temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean shot up over the summer.
So there's this statistical relationship between warmer waters being statistically associated with more storms.
Matthew Rosenkrantz is the lead hurricane season forecaster with NOAA's Climate Prediction Center. He says the heat in the ocean helps power existing storms.
And then that creates a positive feedback cycle. And the more energy you have in that ocean, it's more fuel for the storm to just keep intensifying and keep growing in strength.
The upgraded forecast could spell trouble for Canada.
That usually means there's a possibility of increased activity for us as well.
Chris Fogarty is with the Canadian Hurricane Center in Dartmouth.
If we have a wet hurricane moves up here, that could be quite problematic, of course, because the ground already and river levels are high.
Much of Nova Scotia is still recovering from a massive July storm that brought flash flooding that claimed 4 lives and washed out roads and bridges.
Our roads right now are, not in the best state from the flooding. We've still got a lot of major work going on right now.
Erica Flack is the Director of Emergency Management for the Halifax Regional Municipality. She says they're encouraging people to clean out their drains and follow safety and preparedness tips.
So we do expect the worst this summer, fall. I don't even know if we've had a summer, to be honest, but we are prepared and we are expecting not a good season here in Atlantic Canada.
And as it approaches, Wade Bryanton is confident his new barn will stand up to the elements.
I think we're ready.
And hopefully, he's right. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, now to the home of the Blue Jays, where retired home run king Jose Bautista has taken his place among the best players in Major League Baseball. As Philip Lee Shannock reports, today there was plenty to celebrate for fans and Bautista himself.
Jose Bautista, it's time to unveil your name on the level of excellence.
With his family, friends, and a sold-out crowd in the Rogers Centre in Toronto, Jose Bautista sees his name added to the upper deck of the stadium, among the best players in the franchise's history. Wiping tears from his eyes, he keeps the speech short.
Well, this is not easy. You guys have no idea how much this day means to me and my family.
As a Blue Jay for 10 seasons, Bautista let his bat do the talking. His franchise record of 54 home runs in a single season still stands today.
His place on the level of excellence is so well deserved.
Left field, no doubt about it.
Blue Jays announcer Buck Martinez says Bautista's bat flip after hitting a 3-run homer during the 2015 playoffs will always be a defining moment for the Jays.
I mean, the Joe Carter home run and Jose Bautista bat flip, they're 2 of the greatest moments in history of this franchise. When he started to hit home runs, everybody started to fall in line and said, man, we can be good.
Bautista agrees it was among his many highlights playing for the team.
If I had to pick a moment on the field that was the biggest for me as a Jay, definitely was a bat flip.
Bautista left to play for Pittsburgh for 5 seasons, among other teams, but this week he signed a one-day contract with the Jays so he could officially end his 15-year MLB career with the team.
It means a lot to me too, just to be able to make sure that I could say forever that, the last team that I played for is the Blue Jays.
And as fans showed their appreciation, the 42-year-old Dominican looked into the crowd in the city he called his second home, wiped tears from his eyes, and let everyone know the feeling was mutual.
It was an honor to play for you.
Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Hall up the middle, pushed back.
A forceful comeback for football player Damar Hamlin. The Buffalo Bills safety made a tackle on 4th and 1, ending the Indianapolis Colts offense. Hamlin is playing for the first time since suffering a cardiac arrest during an NFL game in January. He had to be resuscitated on the field. The Bills emerged victorious from this preseason game, 23-19. Well, a COVID subvariant that's on the rise around the world appears to be more infectious, and COVID cases and hospitalizations are growing in several countries. That has experts paying closer attention. Dr. Christopher Labos is an epidemiologist and cardiologist. I spoke with him about this a little earlier. So, Dr. Labos, what do we know about this new strain of COVID-19? It's called EG.5?
Well, it's basically one of the Omicron subvariants, so it's part of the family of Omicron viruses that has been with us for the better part of a year at this point. What we can say about it is that it is becoming more and more common, which means that it does seem to have a survival advantage above the other variants that were circulating. So it does seem to be more infectious. It doesn't appear as if it causes more severe disease than the other variants, but it does look like it's going to replace some of the other variants like XBB and all of its descendants.
Okay, and I know you said maybe less severe, but I mean, what kinds of things do you think it would do to people? Like, how would it show up in people?
Well, it's not clear that it's going to really behave all that differently from previous COVID infections in terms of the symptomatology. It's always hard to know. And especially now when, fewer people are being tested and fewer samples are being sent for sequencing. So it's going to be very hard to see if there's any real clinical difference from what we can see now from the UK and the US, which are seeing this subvariant surge at this point. It doesn't appear as if the symptoms are meaningfully different in any way. It is still a respiratory virus that's going to, cause fever, shortness of breath, coughing, and just make you feel sick for hopefully a short time, but for some people, unfortunately, for a very, very long time afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And how concerned do you think Canadians should be about this new subvariant?
Well, it depends what you mean by concerned. A lot of people look at this in the sense of, well, am I going to die? Am I at risk? Is this going to cause a collapse of the healthcare system? And the answer to those questions is probably no. I do think there is an issue here with regard to COVID. We are starting to see the beginnings of an uptick. Now, that was probably going to happen as we get closer to the fall, regardless of whether this new subvariant is present or not. But, COVID has not gone away. And the fact that new variants continue to emerge means that it is circulating, it is changing, and we ignore it to our own detriment because all you have to do is cast back your mind to a year ago when we had COVID, influenza, and RSV circulating in very high numbers and putting a strain on the healthcare system. We could see something like this again.
Not that I want to think about summer ending, but you're right. Fall is coming. Cold and flu season is coming. How important do you think it is that Canadians get their flu shot and maybe a COVID booster as well?
Very important. We are going to have a COVID booster rollout specifically formulated against the Omicron subvariants, XBB in particular, but there's enough similarity between XBB and EG.5 that the vaccine will cover against both. That will help. It might be impossible to eliminate viruses entirely, but we can go a long way towards minimizing their impact because yes, you may survive an infection, especially if you don't have underlying medical problems, but trust me, you don't want to spend 18 hours waiting in an emergency room to get care. That's not a fun way to spend your day, and if you can avoid that, you definitely should.
Definitely do not want to be spending any time in the ER. Any other recommendations you have for us to avoid catching EG.5?
Here's the thing. It is a respiratory virus. So if you can clean the air, if you can get improved air circulation and ventilation in your business, school, place of work, that's going to make a difference. Any place where there are many people gathering, if we can improve indoor air quality, that's going to make a difference. And we have to start thinking about indoor air quality the same way we think about water quality. We don't tolerate people dying of contaminated water. We should not tolerate people getting sick from contaminated air.
Okay, Dr. Labos, thank you so much.
My pleasure. You take care.
Dr. Christopher Labos is an epidemiologist and cardiologist. 6 people are dead after a boat carrying migrants across the English Channel capsized. Dozens were rescued by French and British authorities, but search efforts are underway for several missing people. The boat was headed from France to the UK through one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Jean-Pierre Finot works for the French National Sea Rescue Society.
They were in trouble. There was the problem of the seasickness, and then also, the boats are quite simply overloaded. They overload the boats, and so the boats can no longer move forward. The last boat where we intervened was too full.
British officials say more than 100,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel since 2018. On Tuesday, it'll be 2 years since the Taliban seized Kabul. The Taliban quickly walked back rights for women in Afghanistan and tightened restrictions on freedom of speech, including silencing all music, restrictions that forced artists to either flee the country or face imprisonment. Najib Asil now on the stories of some Afghan musicians living in exile.
It is very difficult. Like, no one wants to leave their country, you know.
Hesam Farzan is a young Afghan singer who fled Kabul as the city fell to the Taliban in 2021.
You always feel an empty place in your heart, and you always feel incomplete.
Farzan arrived in Canada last fall. I met with him at a restaurant in downtown Toronto. He says his heart is still with his family in Kabul.
I just texted my sister, like, whatever happens, just keep in mind, I love you, I love my mom, but I have to make it to go out of Afghanistan.
Farzan's musical career began with an appearance on Afghan Star, the Afghan version of American Idol. The show inspired millions of young Afghans to showcase their talents. Afghan-Canadian filmmaker Fazila Miri says, before the Taliban took back power, shows like Afghan Star brought hope to the country.
We don't have much cinema, much entertainment, so families are very dependent on television. This kind of shows brought a very beautiful hope in the country.
Ariana Said was a judge on Afghan Star. She regarded as the queen of Afghanistan's music industry. She escaped the country just days after the Taliban took back power in 2021.
August 17, 2021 has been engraved in my mind forever. Even today, I can still feel the pain and emotions of that entire situation.
Said says she determined to continue using her platform to push for social change.
When I was a judge on The Voice Afghanistan or the Afghan Star, I can still remember how excited everyone was just to be a part of the audience, for example. Also just the fact that millions of people around the country could see a powerful and influential woman on their TV screens on a weekly basis empowered many women to have the courage to pursue their impossible dreams.
Last year, she went on a world tour called A New Beginning to keep Afghanistan's music alive, performing 16 concerts around the world so far. And she plans to visit Canada soon.
Singer, a songwriter, and herself an activist.
Said was invited to the EU Parliament last year, where she delivered a musical message for the world.
I am here to represent the millions of Afghan women and girls who do not have a voice or identity of themselves anymore. I urge you and the world not to recognize Taliban as a government.
Hesam Farzan is building a new life here in Canada. He drives for Uber to pay his bills, but he says music is what makes all his sacrifices worthwhile.
The reason I left my home, I left my family, I left everything back there in Afghanistan is because of my career. Nothing can stop me from chasing my goals.
He says despite his struggles, being able to sing freely is a blessing.
Here, besides everything I suffer from, but still I have my freedom. I can wear whatever I want to wear. Like, I can sing wherever I want to sing. And I was not able to do that in my country.
Today, even though the Taliban has scattered these musicians around the world, they refuse to be silenced. and promise their voices will be heard inside Afghanistan again one day. Najib Asil, CBC News, Toronto.
A potential environmental disaster in the Red Sea has been averted. United Nations crews finished removing more than 1 million barrels of oil from a supertanker off Yemen's coast. The storage ship had been left to decay shortly after the war in Yemen began 9 years ago. Achim Steiner is administrator for the UN Development Program.
It was a ticking time bomb, as many called it, and it could have destroyed hundreds of thousands of livelihoods. It could have affected the shipping up the Red Sea towards the Suez Canal. It could have destroyed biodiversity and fisheries for a quarter of a century.
The 18-day effort was no easy feat. The coast straddles conflict zones riddled with sea mines as well as strong currents. While across North America, Chinatowns are under threat. In Vancouver, soaring rents are driving out longtime residents and legacy businesses, but a growing number of people are pushing back. As Yvette Brand reports, for some it's a sacrifice, but as one Vancouver man says, it's worth it.
William Liu loves singing, but when his father needed a kidney transplant, he walked away from auditions at top music schools in New York to come home and help run the family's frozen dim sum shop. Liu says he's seen too many of the legacy Chinatown shops shut down over the years.
To see that deterioration through those years has been really disheartening. And that's part of the reason why I really wanted to come back and just kind of bring new life, new hope into the community.
He's one of a growing group of people returning to Chinatowns to try to save them. Karen Cho's new film, Big Fight, Little Chinatown, documents these fights to revitalize historic Chinatowns in Vancouver, Montreal, and even New York.
What happens to our story here as Chinese Canadians if this place where the diaspora essentially wrote their story, if these places disappear?
Urban planners say Chinatowns, with their walkability and opportunities for entrepreneurship, are more important than ever as Canada welcomes record numbers of newcomers. For Liu, thinking of his grandfather,
I just think he would have been extremely proud.
He knows the effort to save Chinatown is worth sacrifices. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
You're listening to The World This Weekend on CBC Radio. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Who doesn't recognize and love Rapper's Delight? But when the Sugar Hill Gang released that song in 1979, hip-hop still wasn't widely known by that name. Its sonic journey through the decades evolved to what we know it as today.
Don't sweat the technique.
Chris Reyes has more on hip-hop's 50th anniversary from New York.
Where's all my old school friends out there? Make some noise!
At a massive concert at Yankee Stadium, some of the biggest names in hip-hop gathered Friday night to celebrate the music, the movement's 50th birthday in the city that gave birth to it.
See, I'm a gangster, but y'all knew that. The big boss dog, yeah, I had to do that.
Paying tribute, legends and today's masters, Run DMC, Snoop Dogg, Lil Kim, and New York's own Nas. Tens of thousands of fans attended the more than 7-hour-long concert. The grandiosity, a long way from where it all first started.
This is the birthplace, the Big Bang, 1520 right here, where it all began.
That's DJ Kool Herc, pointing to the building in the Bronx, where he DJ'd at his sister's back-to-school party on August 11, 1973. Now widely considered as hip-hop's birthday. He used a mixer to isolate percussion breaks, to switch between two record players. That one gathering would grow into a global phenomenon, influencing artists worldwide with its distinct beats, rhymes, culture, style, and dance moves. Rocky Bucano is one of hip-hop's enduring fans.
Many people didn't think that hip-hop would make it this far, but here we are.
A.D. Carson is an associate professor of hip-hop and the Global South at the University of Virginia. He says hip-hop's contribution goes far beyond music, including being an influential voice in the country's social justice movements.
Hip-hop for the last 50 years has been and still holds the archive of the official histories of the United States. And as it's gone to other countries, I believe that people have been using it as a way to tell the unofficial histories there too.
Today, New York City had more events celebrating hip-hop, including one at Lincoln Center with the Art of the Cypher, a group where teens and kids can express their own freestyle skills. Samia Galman is just 14 years old. She's already rhyming up a storm. Today's event means the world to her.
It means just supporting, showing love to all the old school artists that started this cultural community.
Chris Edmin is a professor at Columbia University and a mentor to the young rappers on stage at Lincoln Center.
I would not be a professor, an academic, a thinker, a scholar, a writer if there were no hip hop. And to have the opportunity to be able to celebrate the culture and to contribute to it in some way is the most life-affirming thing possible.
Okay, let me hear you say yeah.
Back at Yankee Stadium, the packed house and the star-studded stage is a celebration of all that hip-hop has accomplished, and also a declaration. Paradise Gray, chief curator for the Universal Hip Hop Museum in New York, puts it this way.
We're not just here to memorialize hip hop. So 50 years, that's good, but we're here for the next 50 years.
A movement determined to keep spreading its influence around the world. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
This jam is amplified, so just glide. And let your backbone slide.
You didn't think we'd let the 50th anniversary of hip-hop go by without acknowledging some of Canada's best of the genre, did you? Beginning with The Godfather, Maestro Fresh Wes, and 1989's Let Your Backbone Slide, the first single from a Canadian hip-hop artist to go gold. But back in 1990, even Maestro Fresh Wes had to look outside of his home country to find success.
My main market is the States because that's where, or England because that's where rap is large.
Music executive David Click Cox says mainstream success for Canadian hip-hop artists has been a long time in the making. Here's what he told CBC's Eli Glasner.
Never forget having this one phone call with this executive. And he said to me, there'll never, ever be a Canadian superstar rapper. I will never forget that conversation. And that's just an example of like how far we come.
Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team in.
Yeah, obviously, times have changed. Drake elevated Canadian hip-hop to new heights. And while he's still the most high-profile Canadian superstar rapper, there are many more coming up behind him, even if it's still not an easy road.
Sure to come and dance for a minute. I'm not the same when you miss it. Hey,
I feel like they still view hip-hop as like the little stepchild. Sometimes like hip-hop's kind of like the one that's like asking for attention, or that's like, yo, like there's actually some talent here.
King Cruff, born in London, Ontario and raised in Jamaica, says even so, things are looking up for Canadian hip-hop.
The future is going to look so bright. So I feel like right now is just, we're in a moment of patience, and I see it paying off heavily in the near future.
A bright future built on a storied past. We'll leave you with a little more Canadian hip-hop history.
More than sex appeal, it's Jamaican funk. I'm the Jamaican.
This is Mishi Me with Jamaican funk Canadian style on The World This Weekend. I'm Stephanie Skandaris. Good night.
To take a man for everything valid. Rough next, I'll cook you out in a minute. The sweet and sexy have a brain to go with it. Mishy's a perfect combination of a Jamaican woman.
Good, baby.